Okay, hi everyone, and you're all welcome into this fifth year business masterclass. Thanks for joining us. I will keep you just on the hour. What we'll do is we're going to go through the new course. I know some of you are a little bit nervous about it, and I know teachers around the country are the exact same when it comes to new syllabus like this. So what I'm here to do is just make sure that you are all ready for it. You know exactly what you have to do over the next year and a half. So you're more than likely you've been tipping through strand one over the past few weeks and few months as well, before you head on to strand 2, 3, and 4. Then, okay. So main thing I want to get across is that really it's nothing to worry about. Like, even though the content has changed and there is a project in it, it's nothing. It's nothing that's going to throw you off too much. The main thing is just how to answer questions. That's one thing that students really struggle with when it comes to new courses. But just reassured that it's going to be the same examiners that have corrected business for the past 10-15 years. So I've been correcting for the past 12 years, both in business and in economics. And the advantage, I suppose, economics teachers have is that we have been through projects over the past 6 years. So it really helps when like we've been through it, and we know exactly generally what we're looking for then. So that's going to carry over to business, which is great, and it will definitely help you then as you're going through it. So so we'll start. I'll just share my screen here now. Now your mics and your cameras are off for this session, but if you have any questions, please pop them in the chat, and I'll get back to them then at the end. So please don't be afraid to throw whatever you have in there. So right, we will get started. So okay, so I'm not sure if you can, but if just give me a thumbs up there if you can see the screen in front of you. Perfect. Okay. Right. So let's go then. Right. So here are the notes. Now I think these will be made available for you at some stage after. So I'll send them on to the organizer. Okay. So first thing we're going to do is have a glance at the course outline. I'm going to bring you through then how to answer proper Leaving Cert questions then. So exactly what we look for when we go to sit down in the summer to correct them, and how to make it much easier. And that's kind of the main thing for us as well, is for you to make it easy for us to correct. Because if it's laid out like we want it, like the marking scheme sets out, then we generally kind of throw marks at it, and it shows that you're very up to date with the marking scheme, and you know how to answer questions. And then we'll have a look at a sample project, one that myself and a friend of mine put together just in advance of the actual brief, which will come out in January. So what we were working on is the sample brief that came out there at the start of the year. Just give you an idea of what is ahead of you. Okay, so first thing is the course content then. So what more than likely you've been tipping away at here is number one, which is exploring the business environment. So there's 5 different elements of that, and more than likely be finishing up on that over the next while. Then it goes into enterprise, so how entrepreneurs take initiative to go and set up a business, and how they might set up a business as well. So that's number 2. And the good thing as well is that strand 1 and strand 2 are the longest of each of the strands. So, and more than likely you'll be finished that easily by the time you come into March or April. Then we have a look at leading in business. That's leading, motivating, and controlling of how basically to go about business leadership. And then the last one then is how consumers and businesses can keep informed and make informed decisions as well. But that's a very short strand, and that basically finishes you up on the actual course content, which obviously, as you know, is 60% of the overall exam, with the project being 40% then. Okay, so just one thing I would make sure you look at then, especially if you have the notes from ourselves or whatever book you're using as well, just always keep an eye on the first section of it, because the first section it gives what exactly you have to do in each chapter. So this is chapter 1 from strand 1. So at the front here, there's 4 tasks that you have to complete and 4 questions basically that you have to be able to answer. Now, the good thing with this is we're after getting 2 sample papers from the SEC, from the exams. Now, what we've figured out is that once you're able to answer each and every one of these, there's no question on the exam that you won't be able to answer. So always when you're going through it, just tick it off. And it's a good way to go about studying as well, is to make sure that you're able to answer these. And again, there's no question then on the exam that will catch you off guard. So that's basically it for kind of a bit of a study hack then for you to make sure that you're tipping away at them. Okay, so first thing then is I am going to turn off my screen here now because I just need to do a bit of writing, and otherwise you're just going to be staring up at the ceiling. Right, okay, so when you're answering a Leaving Cert question then, so what you have is this. So these are just from our notes that we have here in the day school then. So answering Leaving Cert questions. So the ones that I've highlighted here, they're the ones that have popped up the most on the sample papers. So and it tells you exactly what you have to do. Now, the most common ones are outline, which is down here. So outline has come up 12 times. So that's the most, well, actually the second most common one is outline, and that's very, very straightforward. So all you have to do is give a brief summary, and it has to be very, very short and clear. So for example, the question then will present like this. So outline 2 sources of finance available for a business. And again, don't worry if you're not able to answer that yet, because more than likely you haven't come across it. So that's the second most common one. The most common one is this one up here, which is explain. And across the 3 papers, that has come up 13 times. And the question on that then, example question is, examine how globalization affects Irish entrepreneurs. So if you have gone on to section 1.5 in strand 1, you'll be able to answer that. So simply that's just look closely and give reasons, impacts, or implications. So it's pretty much the same as the outline one. Okay, after that then, they kind of they come in and out. So identify is quite common, and identify has come up 6 times on those sample papers, and that's just name or list and then just explain what's going on in the question. So identify 2 sources of finance in a new business, so very similar to the one with the outline. And the next 2 then are analyze, which we have up here. So analyze we've seen 5 times on the paper, and that's simply just break down with explanations, or it's break down with relationships. So for example, analyze how business policy can influence a decision to expand. Again, you can see that in later chapters. And the last main one then is this one here, which students generally are quite afraid of, which is evaluate. Now, evaluate has come up only 4 times only, and we're going to actually go through a question on that. So evaluate then is make a judgment and give the pros and cons then. So for example, evaluate the impact of digital transformation on small businesses. So how technology has changed them. So they're generally the main questions that come up on the paper. So we're going to go through those to show you exactly how to answer those. Now, the only one that's a bit strange here is the conduct. Now, the conduct has come up once on the paper, and conduct is basically to draw something. So from strand 1, for example, it would ask you to conduct stakeholder mapping. So just be able to draw the stakeholder mapping then. Okay, so there are the main questions, and other than that then, or the verbs that come up on the papers. So it's going to make sure that you know exactly how to go about it. Okay, so step 2 then is, well, step 1, obviously make sure you know the verb and recognize how you should answer. Step 2 then is to plan and structure your answer. Okay, so use the marking scheme for guidance, whether that be classroom exams or marking schemes. So first sample there is, apart from taxation. Now, that's the first thing I would always highlight when you read a question. It's because generally you'll be surprised how many students actually skip that, and then their first mark or their first point will be about taxation. Now, what you will find on that, unfortunately, is a tick and a 0. Because tick, it's correct, but 0 because we told you not to use it. The second thing I would do is highlight the actual verb, which is discuss, and then you go and read the question. So discuss the reasons why multinational companies locate in Ireland. So 20-mark question. So you'll see the marks down here. So generally it's 4 at 5 marks. Now, really, really important for us as examiners that you get into this habit. So it's 2 marks for your heading. So 2 marks are awarded for a clear heading, and then 3 marks are awarded for a well-developed explanation. Because if you were to look at past marking schemes, then Where are we going here? So if you're to look at past marking schemes, you can see regardless of the verb, what we always look for then is the heading. So in this case, it's actually 4 marks for the heading and then 1 mark for your explanation, which is quite strange. The rest of them would be something like this. So explain using examples. So explain would get you 2 marks. The explanation would get, or the heading would get you 2 marks, explanation would get you 2 marks, and then the example would give you 1 mark then. So, and you can see that goes through the whole paper then when you're looking at this. So very, very common way of doing it. Okay, so for example, so apart from taxation, discuss the reasons why multinationals set up. So a very, very clear heading starting off, which is educated workforce, and then you give a explanation then. So Ireland has an educated and highly skilled workforce. This gives, now never stop on 1 sentence. We can't or we don't give any marks for 1 sentence. So you have to go for at least 2. So Ireland has an educated and highly skilled workforce. This gives multinationals a better pool of workers with sought after skills to choose from. And then you can see it just goes on then after, making sure that I don't mention anything about tax because they asked me not to. So access to the EU market, we're English speaking country, and then we get grants and we get grants and develop business parks then, which definitely help to set up. Okay, so that's pretty much it then for the discuss, and that's pretty the main one that we see across questions. Now the other one, now this hasn't been used to be very common on the old specification, but we haven't seen it too much on the new one. However, because what they're doing generally is just saying explain, giving an example. But if this does pop up, just remember illustrate is to give your heading, give your explanation, and then give an example at the end. So how you structure your answer then is give your heading, which in this case is the difference between lobbying and negotiation. So tell us this is lobbying. Then you go into your explanation then, trying to influence decisions makers. It's a function of interest groups, and they'll try to influence decision makers through petitions, seminars, public meetings, and information campaigns. And then you give a clear example then from your notes. So the IFA lobbies the government to support Irish farmers through grants and subsidies. So all we would do then is we would give, because we gave lobbying, which is no marks for that, there's 3 marks, as you can see here, for a well-developed answer, and then 2 marks at the end for a relevant example. And then you just do the exact same then for the next. So again, it makes it so easy for us to correct, and generally we will just lob marks at it then, which will obviously make you stand out that bit more. Okay, so a tough one then is this when this verb comes up, which, as I said, came up 4 times on the sample papers, which is evaluate. Now, there's a little bit more you have to do with an evaluation question. So with the evaluation, you can see the marks down here. So 4 at 4 then. So what we do then is we give 4 marks. So 2 marks are awarded for a clear heading. That's number 1. 2 marks are awarded for a well-developed explanation. And then the last one then is 2 plus 2 are given for 2 strong judgments then. Okay, so for example, I give my heading, which is the CCPC, they advise the government. And just like we did previously, they advise on how best to ensure fair competition and welfare of consumers is protected. New legislation could be brought in as a result. Okay, so far I have 2 for my heading, 2 for my explanation. So 2 for my heading, 2 for my explanation, and now I'm looking for 2 marks for my evaluation then. Okay, so for example, always start off with I believe, because you want to bring in your opinion. And at some point then you bring in however, because what you're doing is you're bringing in a pro and then a con, which is the same as I have up here. So illustrate or to evaluate. So bringing in a pro and a con then after. So for example, I believe that advising the government is important and it can lead to stronger laws to protect consumers and fair competition. So that's my pro. However, my con then, the government isn't required to act on the advice, so the impact can be limited. Now, as you can see, I did that the whole way through. Now, you don't need to keep saying I believe. What you could say, for example, is I feel, I think, in my opinion, and I would argue. So that's one way to, or that's different ways to start off. But as you can see, it always ends up somewhere giving the con with however, and however. Okay, so always give your point first, then give your evaluation after. And you'll get into a good habit of that the more and more you do. Okay, so Right, that's about it. We'll do a few of those questions now in a few minutes. So generally, how we'd go through the content then is just breaking down each of these into easily understandable content then. So this comes from chapter 1.5 on strand 1. So question then is factors to be considered when trading internationally. Okay, now the reason there's a number here is because when you look at the notes, as I said from the beginning, so here is a sample of the notes. So if I go down then to strand 5, now strand 5 is a bit of a whopper. So these are 11 things you need to know from this chapter. So I took out number 4 here. So outline the factors to be considered when trading internationally. So that's number 4. When you're able to do that, then you tick it off and you know you'll be able to answer a leaving cert question on it. Okay, so I've laid it out as if it were a question. So we have our heading first, then we have our explanation, and then if needed, then we have an example. So what should be considered if an Irish business, or what we call an ISME, so an Irish small or Irish small and medium enterprise. So the first thing is they need to consider if there's any taxes or tariffs. Now, this is if they're trading outside the EU. So import and export taxes can raise the cost of trading internationally. While Ireland benefits from EU trade deals, tariffs may still apply when trading with countries like the UK and the US. So, for example, Irish cheese exported to the UK may face tariffs post-Brexit, increasing the price of UK customers. And it's really, really important then for this one that you get in the fact that while we're in a very privileged position that we're in the EU single market, which means we don't have any taxes or tariffs to pay when exporting abroad. Now, another thing they need to take into account is the cost. The fact that we are an island nation, it costs us a little bit more than others. So businesses must account for transport, insurance, distribution, and potential customer delays, all of which can add significantly to overall trading costs. So for example, and trading is basically just us selling to different countries. So Irish clothing retailer shipping to Japan must cover high air freight, that's just flying it over, and customs handling fees. Okay, third one then, and again, generally for these, so I have 3, 4, 5, 6. So I have 6 here overall. A rule of thumb always is make sure you know 3 with a backup of a 4th. Now, the reason we need a backup of a 4th is because sometimes they do things like this, which we saw earlier, with the exception of, so they take away one option, but generally from the new paper, there's never any need for any more than 3. Okay, so yeah, so the next one here, which we will go through in a bit of detail, which is exchange rates. Now, with the exchange rates, remember that we can have 2. We can have appreciating or depreciating. So a weak euro can boost Irish exports, while a strong euro may reduce competitiveness. Now, what that basically means is that if the euro is weak, that means the euro is depreciating, which is good for the economy. And when we say, just think of D means it's deadly for the economy. But on the other hand, if the euro is strong, which means the euro is appreciating. So the euro is getting stronger. And then when we say with that, A, just think of A is awful. It's really bad for the economy if the euro is strengthening against another currency. So an Irish tech firm in Cork selling software to the US may earn less if the euro strengthens. So as I said, it's not great. Okay, and then we'll skip down then to competition. So we must take into account the amount of competition in an economy. So for example, so foreign markets can often have strong local and global competitors. Irish businesses must carry out market research to compete effectively on price, branding, and consumer needs. Because otherwise, other companies in other countries will be able to they'll be able to sell their goods for less because their cost of production are less. And the last one we go for then is the language and culture. So again, you have to take in the language and culture if you're selling your goods to another country. So they can impact marketing, consumer relations, and negotiations, often requiring businesses to adapt products, packaging, and advertising. So for example, an Irish biscuit company makes changes to packaging, color, and design for Middle Eastern market due to cultural preferences. Okay, so now we have that. So an easy way to remember that then is just taxes, costs, exchange rates, competition, and if you need a backup then is language and culture. So really handy acronyms then to always remember then. So T, C, E, C, and L. And again, you can cut it down to 4 then if you need. Okay, so let's just see how we answer a question on this. So if you have an A4 pad there, this would really help then. So with the exception of exchange rates, outline one challenge that Irish SMEs face when entering international markets. Okay, so very handy one to start off with then. Okay, so what we go for here is we will go for, so other than exchange rates then, so we'll go for language and culture. So again, make sure that your heading is very clear. So do it in either red or black. And when we get it in the summer, it's always scanned in color, which is great. So that means we can see it. So language and culture. And how we go about answering that then is, so language and cultural barriers. So language and cultural barriers can impact marketing, customer relations, and often requires businesses to adapt products to suit local preferences. Okay, so I can stop there. Now, how that would be marked, more than likely, it would be 2 for the heading and then 3 for explanation. Now, before I go on, just a one tip I'd have for you is always go back and check, did you miss anything in the question? So with the exception of exchange rates, that's fine. I didn't use exchange rates. And it didn't ask me for an example. So I can move on knowing that I've picked up full marks on that. Okay, so the second one then, and we'll finish on this one. So illustrate. Now, the first thing that I do is I highlight it and just remind myself, what does illustrate mean? Well, illustrate means to give an example. Okay, so very straightforward then. So we just need to go for if it's appreciating or depreciating then. Okay, so we'll go for, so illustrate how fluctuating exchange rates might impact the Irish economy, the Irish company trading abroad. So for example, we'll go for an appreciating euro. Okay, so Irish exports become more expensive for foreign buyers, and this reduces competitiveness abroad. Okay, so, and then give an example then, and if you can change your color pen, that would be fantastic then. So for example, e.g., the euro strengthening against the dollar would reduce exports to the US. Okay, so what I'll get from that then is 2 for my heading, 2 for my explanation, and another 2 or 3 then for my example. And now you can see then that, well, that's very clear because they did ask me to illustrate. Okay, and the other one then, again, I won't go into it because we kind of wasted a bit of time, what I'll start with then is just going for the opposite. And the opposite then would be what would happen if there's a depreciating euro. And go for the exact same thing, but all you're doing is flipping it. So go for your explanation and then your example then. And the example I'd give here is different from the one above. So instead of going for the dollar, you can go for the sterling then. So when we're trading with the UK. Okay, so that's it for the illustrate. And then the very last one then is the evaluate. Okay, so remember, evaluate, I must at the end give my own opinion based on the pro and con. But before that, what I must do is basically answer the question, obviously. So evaluate the benefit of Irish SMEs trading abroad. Okay, so yep, so very, very nice question there. Nothing too major. So all we'll do then is that we can access a larger market. So that's my heading. Okay, so Irish SMEs can get access to more consumers when selling abroad. This will bring more revenue for the business. So bring more revenue for the business and higher profits. Okay, so now I must get into my evaluation then. So I believe when a business exports goods abroad, so I believe when a business exports goods abroad, this will increase demand for their goods. So increase demand for their goods and can avail of what we call economies of scale. So the one thing now again, that's later in the chapter, so don't worry about it if you haven't come across it yet, but the one thing that you're trying to avoid is using the same point that you use up here, because if you use the same point, then we more than likely will have to give that 0. So just make sure you change it up a small bit and then go for however. So you must give the con. However, when trading abroad, businesses must take into account tariffs and extra costs. And you can stop there. So very, very clear then where you're going with that question then, which should make it that bit easier. But again, the main thing is, remember, when it says evaluate, make sure you give your pro and con and don't use the same point that you used earlier. And what we get for that then, that question is 2 for the heading, more than likely 3 for the explanation, and then 2 for your evaluation then. Okay, so that's pretty much it for those sample questions then. And again, very little difference to what we had before. Now, next one here is our question 1. So on the Leave and Start paper then, I'll just show you an example of that. So on the sample paper, when you open your exam for the first time, what you will see is this. Okay, so you have one question, or question 1 is worth 90 marks, and question 2 to 5 then are worth 70 marks each. Overall then, what you will get is you will get, so you have to do question 1. Question 1 is compulsory. So what we call this is the applied business question. So you'll get this, and then you'll get about 5 or 6 different questions then to answer, but you must link it to the question, to the actual ABQ that's given in front of you then. So how we go about that then is, so when you get it, it will ask you to identify whatever, but the major difference is it's kind of like an evaluation question, but how you finish it is you give a direct quote from the text, and that's easily the easiest thing to do then. So again, you answer the question, identify 2 financial challenges, so you'll get 2 for the heading, 3 for the explanation, and then 2 for your direct link or direct quote then. So all you need to do then is, here is a sample one that we have. So first thing, now these questions, they bring in both your textbook theory and being able to engage with the actual ABQ. So for example, it starts off by saying define visible exports, and then the second part of that then is explain how they relate to the success of business then. Okay, so based on that then, so the first thing is define visible exports and then explain how they relate to the success of the business. Okay, so first thing is just show them that you're going to go for the definition. So visible exports. So these are goods we sell abroad. And the minute I see goods, then I know you're onto a winner. So these are physical products made in Ireland and sold to different countries. Okay, so that's the first one done. And the second one then is to explain how they relate to the success of a business. Okay, so right, so the only thing pretty much you need there is now I need to go and look to see where that is in my text. So how do visible exports, how do they basically link to the success of a business? Now, I'm after obviously reading through this already. So what I do then is I go look in the text then to see where it's relevant. So I can go down here and then it says she tracks her so she tracks her balance of trade performance closely. 70% of Green Tech's revenue now comes from visible exports to EU countries with minimal imports thanks to local suppliers. Okay, so what I'll do then is I'll put beside it, now this is going to be question 1 for us, but more than likely it will be question 3 or 4 then after. So that she looks at imports and exports closely, and she has a lot of visible exports going to EU countries. So all I need to do then is go back down, give my heading as I've done before. So this will again increase revenue. So this business benefits. So this business benefits greatly from strong export sales, which means, and then just mention it then. So Green Tech has strong links to foreign customers and improves overall revenue. Okay, so I'm almost finished then, and all I need to do then is go back to what I highlighted and then link that in then. So I'm after mentioning the company within my answer, which is always an extremely important thing that a lot of students forget. So what I do then is in a different color pen, go and put in, so she tracks her, it's going to put balance of trade performance closely. And then say 70% of her revenue comes from visible exports to EU countries. Okay, and you can stop there then. I know we went on, but we pretty much have it linked then. Okay, so that's it for that. And again, really, really important then. So again, just like we had before, it would be 2 marks for your heading, more than likely 3 marks for your explanation and then 2 marks for your quote then. So make sure there's 3 things that stand out. So with the heading, that it's very, very clear, here's my heading, then your explanation, and then you go into your quote then after. Okay, so there's another one there, just talking about the balance of trade, but again, we'll kind of waste a bit of time if we go through that too much. Now, what I have here is a QR code, and the QR code for you then will bring you on to the Moodle page. Now, this is a really, really handy resource when you are studying. So I have 5th year business here. So when you go into that, then I'll be able to give you access. So all you need to do then, and you probably have it in school as well, but all of the chapters, the first 2 strands are here. So for example, let's just say you're working on this one here. So and then you want to just test yourself. You can have flashcards there. You can test. You can match, put in categories and so on. So that's all ready for you. So when you're sitting down to study that chapter then, so you're wondering what a trading block is, one of the really important definitions, you just flip it over and that's what you have then on the back. So all of that is finished. So you don't pretty much have to worry about it too much. Okay, so right, there's the QR code for that. Right, that's pretty much it then. I just want to see if there's any questions, and no, you're all very quiet. That's fine. Okay, so now let's have a quick chat about the Business Alive investigative study then. Okay, so now this is just going to be a quick introduction to this. I'll just throw on my camera there again. Okay, so it's a quick introduction to the project and what's basically facing you in the next few weeks. Okay, so first thing is that this is pretty much what you have to do. So overall, it's 1,500 words. And that's not including references and so on. So you can see here, so the Business Alive investigative study should consist of the following section headings with the suggested word count. And you should use these headings throughout then. So your introduction is going to be 200 words. Now, what we're looking for in the introduction, state what you're trying to answer. Explain the rationale for choosing it. So you have to tell us, why did you choose this particular question? And then reflect on how you engaged with the project. Now, what project are we looking at? So the sample project then, was basically looking at transparency and accountability in businesses. So the question is, you're required to explore how ethical considerations impact marketing for a business of your choice operating in the service sector of Ireland. So there's a few things within that then you have to kind of break down. So you're exploring the ethical considerations around marketing for a business of your choice in the service sector. So it's really important then that you hit all of those. So firstly, you have to just learn about ethics from your notes. Then you have to go find a business that you want to analyze. Now, this is where I think is a slightly different to economics, where more than likely you're going to have to do more primary research or find a business that'll be willing to chat to you about it. And then in the service sector in particular, so that's just businesses that provide a service, whether that be banking, hospitality, fitness. So that's one that we're going to look at for the sample project then. Okay, so once you have that then, so you just remind yourself of the introduction. So this is what I need to go for here. So the sample that we have is here. So it's 200 words, and I went for an online fitness trainer, which we're all very familiar with. Okay, so I started with just the introduction. I have my research question here, and the 2 questions are the 2 aims that I want to get out of it. Okay, so basically I'm looking at what's my question and what's my rationale behind choosing this. So basically, the health and fitness industry is often criticized, and again, bringing in very quickly then, with less ethical marketing tactics, including guilt-based advertising, exaggerating promises, and complicated methods that may feel that people have a specific plan to achieve results. Okay, so many businesses rely on clickbait promotions, such as lose 30 pounds in 30 days, or heavily edited transformations. So again, you're really getting into your ethics here to say that everything here is not ethics. So then bring in your own thing then. So why did you decide to do this? I began researching how you went about it. I began researching Irish examples of businesses that promote themselves differently. So this led me to Sean Casey Fitness. So for no nonsense, evidence-based approach for weight loss. So his strong client base made him my ideal example. So how are you going to go about it then is your last part here. So as part of my project, I first intended including data from advertising regulation, but after interviewing Sean Casey, I adjusted my plan to explore how ethical marketing supports sustainable business growth. So this change was inspired by Sean's interview and allowed me to strengthen my link. So that kind of links back then to what we had up here, which was the rationale for choosing the project and how you engage with it. So you're already saying that this was my initial idea, but then I pivoted then because I knew that I'd get better results from it. So that's pretty much all you need to do for the introduction then. So tell us, basically give us an introduction into what ethics is, why you chose this in particular, and your rationale for changing it. So your overall question for this then is, how do ethical marketing practices such as honesty, fairness, and transparency influence the success of Sean Casey's fitness then? Okay, so how are you going to go about it? Well, there's two ways in which you're going to try and answer this. The first way is that to investigate how Sean Casey Fitness applies ethical principles across marketing communication. And the second one then is to analyze consumer perceptions and relations to ethical and unethical marketing. So you're going to go into the business first. And the second thing you're going to do is look at just consumer perceptions around ethical and unethical marketing. Now, with these three sections here, this makes your project an awful lot easier. So your question, your aim 1, and your aim 2, because you can refer back to that to make sure that you're on the right road. Okay, so that's it for the introduction. Now, second thing we go on to here is the big one, which is the so this is 400 words overall, and this is the investigations and findings. So this is basically where you put your data that you found. So explain the purpose and relevance of the different research methods. So you're explaining the relevance, the purpose, and the methods of the methods that you've chosen, and the sources that you used as well. Present your research findings and consider a variety of perspectives. So that's pretty much saying that you have to use more than one source. Because if you just use one source, then we're not getting a true kind of image of how this is of ethics within in this sector. So what this looks like then, and again, I'm not going to spend too much time on it there, but it's the investigation. So first thing I go into is what's the purpose and the relevance, just like I had in the marketing scheme. Okay, so what I say there is to gain direct insight into how ethical principles are applied, I carried out an interview with Sean Casey. Again, there is my primary research straight away to show the examiner that I went out to look for it myself. So there's your primary research. Okay, so I also conducted a short consumer feedback to provide first-hand unbiased evidence as to how people perceive ethical and unethical practices. So I have two sources or two primary sources already. And then I go on to my secondary sources. So this is primary and then my secondary. So I lay that out very, very quickly for the examiner then. And I tell them for my secondary, I used online reviews, news articles, and industry commentaries added wider perspective. Okay, so my source 1, as we have up here, was the interview with Sean Casey. So I give a brief outline as to what happened. So Sean explained that the tides are turning of unethical marketing and people weren't as educated and didn't have access to good information. So he also said being upfront and honest with people, with people's interests at heart, is the best way to run a business, being that ethics in marketing is the best future for being successful. So overall then, that's my first. Second one then is I listened to a podcast then based on this. So this is my source number 2. So again, I just picked up from it then that he is very much against the sleazy marketing, the whole lose 30 pounds in 30 days, because overall it's not very sustainable. So describing them as good for marketing money, but not for actual good marketing. Okay, so goes into a little bit of what he said on his podcast. So that was my source number 2. My source number 3 to 6 then were these. So these are the sources that I got from media marketing. So these before and after pics that I got from Sean himself. So before and after pics, I give a little bit of commentary here. Now, the main thing with these is that I don't want to give too much away, because what I have to do in my third section, when we go down here after a while, is this is where I analyze and I evaluate everything that I found. So all that you're doing up here is you're giving the data that you picked up, but don't analyze it too much first. You're just basically telling us what is the source that you found. So now, really important point as well is we want to see a good bit of this. Now, a lot of teachers and students feel that this is a business report, so you can't use your own say opinions too much, but that's actually not the case, because this is your project. So we want generally, and it goes across business and economics, we want to hear the student voice, because that's where the evaluation marks come from. I was surprised he used such photos given his stance, yet they appeared genuine rather than misleading. And there's just another example then of another one where he shows that these are unrealistic. Okay, and then you go on to your primary data, where you interviewed or you send a survey to customers. So these now, and it's best, rather than just getting something random online, to do it by yourself. Now there's plenty of different there's a lot of different websites online that you can use. Canva is probably the easiest and kind of nicest looking one to use. So just kind of get up on how to use those. So the impact on credibility of before and after. So what we say here is we give the results. So 64%, and just tell us briefly then what it is. So 64% strongly agree that before and after photos help brand appear credible. However, 36% disagreed, indicating mixed feelings about their use. So having before and after pictures, what did it do? The same thing then with the impact of online reviews. So 84% strongly agreed or disagreed that they would still buy from a brand with poor online reviews. Now, again, we don't want to go into it too much in terms of the analysis, because that's in the next section. Okay, and then I have figure 4 and figure 5, just looking at unrealistic claims and transparent advertising. And again, very, very short analysis on it, because then, as I said, I'm going to go into my my big one, which is 600 words, which is the evaluation and the analysis then. So as I said, give all your data and your sources what you found in the second part, and then we're going to talk about it now in part 3. So part 3 then, if we go back up here, is the analysis and evaluation. So 600 words overall. So you're going to analyze your research findings, evaluate your research findings, and then demonstrate originality and critical thinking. Now, this is a big, big one here, the critical thinking. This is where a lot of students in economics generally fail to pick up the full marks. But this is why I hope that you know what you have to hone in on this. So again, we don't put any graphs in section 3, because we've pretty much done that in section 2. So starting off then, so I'll just go through one or two of these then. So evaluation and the analysis. So my heading then, and make sure your headings are very clear. So ethical marketing builds trust and supports sustainable success. How do I know that? Well, I know that from my data. So findings from both aims indicate that honest, transparent communication strengthens consumers' trust in long-term success. In the interview, he says that ethics in marketing is a future of being successful, and aligns, and this is aligned. So what I'm doing then is I'm bringing both my primary researches together. So this is why this bit is analysis. So both my primary sources together to make sure that what I found backs up with what he said. So this aligns with the survey where 87 or 84% of respondents said they're more likely to trust brands using realistic advertising. Now, also, what we do want to see as well is you bringing in textbook theory as well. So this is strategic business advantage. Now, put those in bold when you're going through it, because we want to know that you are bringing in what you found on the course into your project as well. So qualitative data. So you're going to have 2 of those. And again, if we had more time, we'll go into the difference between qualitative and quantitative. Quantitative is just your numbers. Qualitative is then opinions that you get from people or from newspapers. So qualitative data from an interview with the podcast said that Trustpilot and so on adds credibility and loyalty then as well. Okay, so that's my first one. My second one then is, how do I balance realism and persuasion is essential for credibility. So this is what I found then. And again, all you're doing is just going through what you found and putting it into a paragraph. So while honesty builds credibility, the findings show, where was your findings back in 2, that effective marketing must still persuade consumers to buy. So Casey used before and after photos surprised me. And again, this is where you have your student voice, given his criticism of exaggerated quick fix. However, the images appeared genuine and avoided unrealistic claims. Now, did I back that up with my data? I did. So the survey data reflected this. 64% agree that transformation photos build credibility. Now, this is where you're going into your evaluation a small bit. So what else could have caused this? So this highlights that ethical communication requires balance, celebrating progress without exaggerating outcomes and promising similar results. So overall then, what Casey said was that lighting transformations demonstrated poor practice then overall. So this is where you're really digging into it, where this is my data, but this is what I also think led to these results. Okay, so I have 2 other sections there looking at unethical practices and then bringing it all together then. Now, this is where you might have, it might take a bit of time. So you have to show where it's credible and reliable. Now, so basically you're saying, this is what I did well, but this is what I could have also improved in my project. So this is the very last point then on your section 3. So what you're doing then is the strong evidence. So came from the overlap between the interview, podcast, survey, and data review. So overall, I did a lot. But my weaker evidence then, so included self-published material from Sean Casey's platform, which may be more favorable brand image and a very small sample size. So N is basically your sample size. So it's only 44 people, which limits the extent to which the findings can be generalized. So that's what I didn't do overly well. So you have to be a little bit critical then. And then what you're doing is just summing up with overall then. The evidence can be considered reliable because similar patterns and messages appeared across unrelated sources. So you can see there that it's not just Sean Casey that's saying this, it's saying it across different platforms. Okay, so that's pretty much your main analysis done then. And when you get to part 3, like, you're pretty much done, because all you're doing then in your conclusion is pretty much summing up what you have found, and you're just summing it up then in less than 300 words. So if we bring you just back up here quickly. So in the conclusion then, so 300 words. So present your conclusions justified by the analysis. Outline how your planning contributed to successful completion, discuss how your perspective evolved, and then consider how your findings connect to real world of business. So that's really, really important then. So all I do then is, when I flick back down here, so just sum it up then overall. So ethics is a modern competitive advantage. So I just went in and just summarized what I found within it. And again, that's very, very handy to do, because all you're doing is just kind of condensing what you had in part 2 and part 3 into a very, very short paragraph. And then you finish off then with number 2, so effective planning strengthened my investigation. So what you're saying then is you're really reflecting then on how you went about it. So this is your reflection. So, for example, having a plan in place early made adjustments easier, so I could see what parts I was changing more clearly. The early interview reshaped my focus from regulation to ethical practices, and combining qualitative methods and quantitative data provided balance and reliability. Each method linked directly to my research question, providing consistent and verifiable evidence. So there's your reflection, what you did very well. And overall then, this is your own opinion. So what did you come up with at the very end of this? So at first, so what did you think firstly, and how did that change then? So how did your thinking overall change? I viewed ethics as black and white. However, seeing how Sean Casey used before and after changed my view that all transformation type imagery was misleading and exaggerated. I learned that marketing can remain persuasive as it needs, while still being transparent about expected results. And then at the end then, I understand business communication, ethics, and so on in today's environment leads to better marketing. So yeah, so that's just your own opinion when you're summing up. Now, the main thing with the conclusion is that we don't want, so no new evidence or no new data, because this is just summing up what you have done before. And I'm happy to say that that is you done, because all you need to do then is reference after. And I'll probably spend a whole class then going through how to reference, but it's not overly difficult. So you don't have to worry too much about that. Now, so just before we finish up then, so I gave a little bit of tips when you're going through this. So first thing is choose a business that you can actually observe. So when you do get the brief in January, so choose a business that you can get access to chatting. So generally what we'd look for is a real Irish business. Now you can compare it to a foreign business, but you have to stick to an Irish one. So another example we went for is the Galman then is a hotel in Galway. So avoid as I say here, avoid huge multinationals, because it's very, very difficult to get data specifically from them. So if possible, email or talk briefly with a staff member to include as a primary research. So instantly strengthens the authenticity. And what we look for as well is originality. Because in every subject in the Leaving Cert, you have to be exceptional. You have to stand out in order to get a H1. So again, this primary research will basically bring that to them. So make the research question focused. So make sure that you know exactly what you're doing. So mention why the topic matters, and this is in your introduction. So use a wide range, as we said there, use a wide range of resources, whether that be primary or secondary. Present your graphs that explain and not just decorate. So make sure you're using graphs that actually add to your project, because what we see in economics sometimes is that they put in a graph because it looks nice, but it doesn't add anything to it, and that will bring your marks down. And make sure you're analyzing it very well as well. So refer to the text as shown in figure 3. 86% of employees felt proud about the hotel ethics, whatever. Now, I put in a Spotify one there because, again, you kind of, especially if you want to do well in business, you do have to keep up to date with what's going on in the world of business. So there was one from Morning Ireland, and I assume you all have Spotify. But what you can see here is there was an interview this morning. So Minister calls for hotels to basically get rid of dynamic pricing during Euro 2028. So it was announced yesterday that I think it was 6 or 7 games will be on in Dublin in the Aviva. But what the minister was saying that he hopes hotels won't cash in on it too much and basically act in an ethical manner. So again, when you listen to small snippets like this, it really does help bring your project alive. So I left that in there just because, again, when I was going through this, it obviously linked to what I was speaking about, just being ethical and not trying to rip people off just because you can. Okay, I said just write it like a business report. So make sure that it's excellent, or it's you have the evaluation and so you know exactly what to do for the evaluation and the analysis. Choose your conclusions, the aims and the research question, and keep in a professional tone. So it's not too chatty, basically. And last thing then is make sure to keep a short logbook or notebook as you're going through it. And this can be online, obviously, so where you can screenshot things or add in like something like that, URLs from podcasts or something like this. And make sure you keep the reference list concise, and then connect everything back to the research question. But again, I could spend hours going through this, but overall, that is basically what's in front of you for the project. So I hope it's a little bit clearer as to what your as to what you have to do over the next while. But again, don't worry, for the next few weeks, we won't get it until January. Okay, so as I said, it's nothing to worry about in terms of the new course. Very, very concise. Not a huge amount of difference in terms of the project or in terms of the course content. When you go into the exam, the project is a little bit different, obviously. But again, as you said, when you break it down like that, and when you do get into it, and what I see with my economics students is they do start to enjoy it after a certain while. Okay, right. That's the hour. So if you have any questions, I'll stay on for a minute or two. Just lob it into the chat. But other than that, I will hopefully see you again at some stage. And very, very best luck with everything in 5th year. So how will the project work for those doing it in sixth year? Okay, so we don't have to submit it until December of 2026. So that won't be a problem. Now, obviously, your window will be a lot shorter, but that won't be an issue at all. That we'll get it done, obviously, within the time frame. So when you come in sixth year, we'll start it straight away for you, and then submit it for you then in December. So yeah, no issues there. Um, yeah, Steve, I'll chat to you about that in class, but it is we will start at the end of fifth year, just so you don't have too much work to do in sixth. Okay, so how long will it take? So just going from the economics, which is actually quite similar, it generally will take roughly about, so in class, if you're kind of in another school, it's 20 hours that you'd work on it in class. We do generally do it a little bit different. So we kind of allows some students to do it at home, but overall it will probably take the guts of 4 to 5 weeks generally, depending on kind of how quick the teacher gets it back to you. So yeah, so you will be working on it for about a month to 6 weeks overall. Yeah. Yeah, so this video, it is recorded, so it will be available. I just have to get in touch with the organizer there, but you will be able to rewatch this, anyone who did sign up. So yeah, that'll be fine. Okay, right. I don't see any more questions, so I will leave it there. If I'm doing this by book, what topic should we? Oh, again, teachers move at different paces. Um, so ourselves, we're on the last chapter. We're on the last chapter of strand one. But again, we might move quick through it a bit quicker. So yeah, so yes, I'd say a lot of schools would be on pretty much 1.4, 1.5 at this stage. So yeah, you'd be fine. Um, so our teacher told us that would be prohibited from helping us during the project. Do you have any idea how examiners will enforce this? It's basically just the word of the school, so the teachers have to sign off on it. But yeah, so teachers can help up to a point, but obviously can't do it for you. So they're just basically checking that all your data and your sources are done properly, that you're not getting help that you shouldn't be. But again, teachers will obviously check before they send it in, because obviously your grade depends on it. So you will, don't worry, you will get a bit of help from teachers. Um, I generally would feel that the teachers, so I'm just answering the question here on the summer holiday. I generally feel that teachers will want you to be in school and kind of focused on it. So whether that be at the end of fifth year or at the start of sixth year, I don't think, and we definitely won't be in the institute anyway. Expecting you to do any work on it in the summer, because we obviously need to see how you're getting on and how if you're on the right track. So again, teaching might be different, but ourselves, we'll definitely want to see the students in class doing it, and seeing how they're getting on. Okay, right. I think that's about it. So I'll end it there. But yeah, I hope to see you again soon, and best of luck with everything. All the best.